morning. Welcome to First Chapter Fun. This is episode 12, believe it or not. It's Saturday, it's the weekend. We made it through another week of, weirdness and self-isolation and all that fun stuff. Hi Jennifer, how are you doing? I'm going to wave at Jennifer on Instagram, and we have Sarah as well. We have Judy Rose up on Facebook and Kathleen, Katie the dentist, and wow, goodness, lots of people joining. This is fantastic. So as always, we have hi Maria, we have Facebook up here, we have Instagram down here, and for those of you who have not joined First Chapter Fun yet, this is the place where I read the first chapter of a book, a new book, a different book, every day at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Judy Rose says, "You're looking good again today." Oh, thank you. And we have Farah. Farah Heron has just joined us up on Facebook, which is wonderful. Thank you, Farah. It's Farah's book that I'll be reading from today. So let's get cracking, shall we? Let me show you this cover. Try and get rid of the glare. So this is what we're reading today. There you go. You can see it up there. I'm going to go up to Facebook so you can see it there as well properly. There we go. Isn't that a gorgeous cover? Oh, we have a Michelle Richardson. Hi, from South Africa. That's amazing. So today is not a thriller. Today is a rom-com, and I'm so excited to be reading from a rom-com today. I read a lot of thrillers, obviously, because that's what I write. So it's lovely to be able to read from this one today. Hi, Farah. There's your lovely book. And I believe this is actually going to go on sale next week. Is that right, Farah? It's on sale next week in the US, maybe also in Canada. So Farah's a fellow GTAer, GTA being the Greater Toronto area, and we met in person for the first time back in January when going to a restaurant was still feasible, and we had a big author dinner. So that was lovely, and we actually got to have a chat. So this is what I'm going to be reading from today. I'll show that again for those of you who've just joined. Oh, the glare is so bad. There it is on Facebook, and there it is on Instagram. And Natalie says, "Oh, a change. Nice change from the spooky, scary stuff." Yes, I like reading rom-coms. Rom-coms are fun in between all of the thriller reading that I'm doing. I'm writing, of course. So this is really cool. And we have Steve who's joined. Hi, Steve, as well, and Dale as well. Lots of people. Oh, so Farah has confirmed that the Trifecta, which I'll be reading from in a second, will be on sale Kindle US for $1.99 next week. $1.99. You can't go wrong, can you? So shall we get stuck in? Let me read this. So Farah, this is her debut novel, The Trifecta, and it was released by HarperCollins Canada last June, so you can get your hands on it right now. It was named one of last summer's best books by the Globe and Mail. Great credentials there, the Globe and Mail, and has been praised in Book Riot, Smart Bitches Trashy Books, love that name, Bustle, and more. And Farah is currently working on another book, a new book called The Right Spice. Love those titles, Farah, they're fantastic. So let me tell you, or let me read to you, rather, the blurb or the book cover for The Trifecta. Here we go. Amira Khan has no plans to break her no dating rule. 30-year-old engineer Amira Khan has set one rule for herself: no dating until her grad school thesis is done. Nothing can distract her from completing a paper that is so good her boss will give her the promotion she deserves when she returns to work in the city. Amira leaves campus early, planning to work in the quiet basement apartment of her family's home. But she arrives home to find that her grandmother has rented the basement to a barbershop quartet. Seriously? The living situation is awkward. Amira needs silence. The quartet needs to rehearse for a competition, and Duncan, the small-town baritone with the flannel shirts, is driving her up the wall. As Amira and Duncan clash, she's surprised to feel a simmering attraction for him. How can she be interested in someone who doesn't get her or her family's culture? This is not a complication she needs when her future's at stake. But when intolerance rears its ugly head, and people who are close to Amira get hurt, she learns that there's more to Duncan than meets the eye. Now she must decide what she's willing to fight for. In the end, it may be that this small-town singer is the only person who sees her at all. So that... Farah just says the Right Spice title has changed. We don't have a new title yet. Oh, okay. So that will be for Farah's next book, though. But the Trifecta still says the Trifecta, and the sale starts on March 30th, we believe. So stay tuned and have a look up. As always, I will put this video up on Facebook, and please leave some comments and questions and whatnot for Farah. Because authors always love engaging with readers, that's for sure. All right, so let me read you chapter 1 of the Trifecta. Here we go. The Trifecta by Farah Heron, chapter 1. If there were a Sufi saint who protected single women travellers, Amira Khan was sure she'd royally pissed her off at some point in her previous life. The last time Amira travelled alone, she'd been unceremoniously escorted out of the security clearance area of the Toronto airport, blocked from boarding her flight to Philadelphia. Nothing like that could happen now. This was a train, and there was no border crossing between the small city where she went to grad school and Toronto. No border meant no overzealous guards accusing her of terrorism because of her last name and fondness for Arabic calligraphy. But as her train appeared to be stuck in some place called Port Hope, and as a creepy man wearing silver pants appeared to be studying her, Amira clearly couldn't quite trust any deity to help her reach her destination unscathed. She peeked at the creep. It wasn't his silvery grey pants or his black shirt opened a button too far that was making the hair on her neck stand on end, but rather the man's intense focus. Amira sank in her seat, hoping to hide from him. She hated travelling alone. She'd left for grad school campus early, partly because of overly forward members of the male species, only to now get stuck on an almost empty train car with one. Finally, the doors slid open for new passengers. Good. More people meant more protection should things get hairy with the locomotive libertine. She turned to look. Only one boarded, and holy hell did he stand out. A tall man with an orangey-red beard. He had facial hair that was accessorised with a plaid flannel shirt and black suspenders, resulting in a look that some might call hipster, but Amira could only describe it as garden gnome chic. Sauntering down the aisle, he bobbed his head to whatever was playing through his earbuds. She guessed either southern rock or new country. Yep. Either a hipster or a hick. She hoped that, whatever he was, he'd keep on walking past the 3 empty seats in her section, as she was not in the mood for small talk. His long legs strolled by and settled into the window seat diagonal to Mr. Silverpants. Good. Maybe with the lumberjack watching him, the libertine would stop drooling so openly. The doors shut, but the train stood still, holding at the Port Hope station. She checked the time. By her estimation, they'd been waiting in Port Hope for 15 minutes now. This wasn't how her day was supposed to progress. Amira had made the decision to come home early on impulse, after desperately trying to write her final project report in her dorm room, while the undergrads in the common room loudly played something called Fizz Buzz Woof, which, from what she could tell, was a drinking game based on long division. At 30 years old, dorm living wasn't ideal, but it was all she could afford. And she didn't really blame the undergrads. She was once young and stupid herself. Arguably stupider. But thankfully, she was almost done grad school. She'd worked so hard, and the final homestretch felt so good. Her report was due to her advisor in 2 weeks, and she had one more meeting on campus a week later. After 2 crazy hard years of work, she'd be granted her Master of Engineering in June. She'd then return to her consultant job at one of the city's biggest engineering firms, and those new letters after her name would hopefully mean a promotion within 2 years. Everything was falling into place. What could possibly go wrong at this point? "Attention passengers," the loudspeaker on the train crackled. "Due to mechanical problems, all passengers are asked to disembark at this time. A replacement train is en route and will arrive shortly. We apologise for the inconvenience." Amira groaned. Of course, life always snuck in to kick her in the arse whenever she grew too smug. The Port Hope train station was tiny and old and hot. Not much more than a small one-room heritage building with arched windows and a wide roof overhang. And with the 100 or so people from the train inside and outside the tiny stone building, it was now very crowded. Amira wedged herself in the corner of the room and tried to blend in. "This is very bad luck, isn't it?" a thin voice behind her said. She turned. Crap! Silverpants had found her. His facial expression did not improve with the closer vantage point, and he smelled overwhelmingly of too much cologne. She turned away, looking out the window, hoping he'd take the hint. "Are you from India?" he asked. Amira's jaw clenched as she turned back to him. His brown skin was just a hair lighter than her own, and while his English seemed fluent, his accent sounded like he could have arrived only yesterday from somewhere on the Indian subcontinent. "No," she answered. "Pakistan then? Bangladesh?" "I'm Indian-Canadian," she deadpanned. He stepped closer. In the crowded station, it was barely noticeable that he'd invaded her personal space, but Amira still tensed. Her eyes looked for an escape as his pants skimmed the full skirt of her dress. She needed to get out of this place. What the hell had she been thinking when she dressed this morning? It would be near impossible to bolt or to kick the man in his iridescent pants wearing the dress and high-heeled ankle boots. She dressed up for her trip home, celebrating, in a way, her transition back into real life. And in her real life, as an engineering consultant, tailored suits or blouses and skirts were Amira's armour, not the sweats and hoodies of grad school. But now she wished she had her sweats back, or at least jeans. "You like Hindi songs?" the creep asked. "I sing in a Bollywood music group in Toronto." He stepped half a pace closer, his hand inching towards the hem of her dress. Leaning into her neck, he spoke softly. "I heard Canadian girls don't wear underwear." She froze, bile rising to her throat. "There you are, babe," a loud, husky voice next to her said. "Couldn't find you on the train." She turned to see the red-bearded man standing in her personal space. Up close, the garden gnome was bigger than he'd seemed on the train. Bigger and more everything. Hairier, stronger looking, and actually very handsome. His voice was deep, and although it was friendly, his eyes were intense, almost angry, and really bright green. Amira clutched her bag. With a wall on one side of her, brawny paper towel dude on the other, and Mr. Sexual Harassment in front of her, she had nowhere to escape. One step forward and she'd be pressed against Silverpants. One step sideways would put the garden gnome on her arse. She bristled, taking a half step backward and hitting the heel of her boot on the stone wall. The last thing she needed was these two boneheads competing over her. "This your boyfriend?" Silverpants asked. Why wasn't her mouth working? In an hour, she'd no doubt have a biting comeback on her lips that would have sent both guys packing, but in this moment, she was frozen. "Yes," the garden gnome responded, placing his hand on her shoulder. It was warm and solid through the thick fabric of her denim jacket, but she still stiffened. She glared at the gnome, but he held firmly onto her, his bright green eyes glaring back. Despite the stereotypes of engineers being socially clueless, Amira liked to think she understood human nature pretty well, especially the male human nature. As a woman in a STEM field, she was usually surrounded by more testosterone than at a NASCAR rally. So, she did understand what was happening here. The lumberjack clearly had seen Amira's panicked expression when the creep approached her. He was acting chivalrous. He decided the poor single woman in the train station was in danger, and it was up to him to sweep in to rescue her like some sort of garden gnome superhero. And while Amira's logical brain told her to be grateful for the save, her anger did what it always did, and silenced her logic. So, she couldn't find it within herself to feel any kind of thoughts for her saviour. There were countless other things he could have done instead of pretending to be her boyfriend. He could have told the other guy to fuck off. He could have alerted the train staff about the harassment. He could have done any number of things that didn't involve touching her and claiming her as his own. Predictably, though, the lumberjack's strategy worked. Despite his gnome-like attire, there was no denying he was a big man, a burly man, a man who could probably crush the creep with nothing but the heavy hand still perched on her shoulder. A small wave of terror passed over Silver Pants' face as he took 2 steps back. He eyed Amira suspiciously. The hand on her shoulder tightened. "My apologies," Silver Pants said, inching away before retreating to lick his wounds. Yuck. So that was the first chapter of the hilarious The Trifecta. There we go for Instagram, and up here for Facebook by Farah Heron. There we are. I hope you enjoyed that. It made me laugh out loud when I read it. I practiced these readings beforehand, which is a good thing because otherwise I'd be laughing out loud while I'm reading it. So go and check that out. It's a really, really fun book. And as I mentioned, if you didn't join this video early on, it will be on sale, certainly in the States next week. $1.99 for Kindle and possibly in Canada as well. So that was today's book, and don't forget that you can go and leave questions for Farah on Facebook when I save this. And let me show you what I'll be reading from tomorrow. So today was a rom-com. Tomorrow we're back to a thriller, and tomorrow's book is I'll Never Tell. Oh, the glare is just awful, isn't it? I'll Never Tell by Catherine Mackenzie. That will be tomorrow. So if this is the first time you've watched First Chapter Live, every day, First Chapter Fun even, every day at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, I read the first chapter of a new book on Facebook Live up here and on Instagram Live down here. So join me again tomorrow, and until then, stay safe, stay kind, and I'll see you tomorrow.